Welcome to Homeschool Nolan, here to help you navigate learning in the digital age. If you follow the news, you may have noticed that the world seems like a more dangerous place than it was just a few years ago. Of course, a war has been raging in Ukraine over the past year, and now there is serious talk that World War III might break out in Asia over the island of Taiwan. Now, there have of course been many wars over the past century, but the last time a global conflict between major powers represented an existential threat to countries all around the world was World War II. And today, I'd like to talk about why World War II still matters and why it's important that we teach the history of World War II to our kids. But first, why study any history? Well, to put it simply, we study history so that we can learn from the past and use it as a guide as to what we should and shouldn't do today. Our kids will one day grow up and become voters and maybe even future leaders. And nobody should make important decisions about the future without at least being aware of what has happened in the past. We've all heard the cliche that history repeats itself. And while that's not always the case, I believe history has shown that human nature really hasn't changed much over the years. Human beings have always been capable of great achievement as well as unspeakable cruelty towards others in times of war. And World War II was no exception. World War II began because of issues and trends that once again seem familiar today. Trends like nationalism, fascism, and countries claiming the territory of their neighbors and invading them. But perhaps the most important lesson learned from World War II is how much costlier it is to fight a war than it is to deter one. Now, World War II, of course, included a lot of violent and horrific events, such as the Holocaust and the atomic bomb, that younger children might not be ready to learn about. So it's up to each parent to decide when their kids are ready to learn about World War II. If you follow my channel, you probably know that I've been a fan of the WhoHQ series for teaching kids about history and biographies. I found 3 books from the series that I feel are perfect for teaching my 10-year-old about World War II. These books are What Was Pearl Harbor? What Was the Holocaust? And what was D-Day? Let's start with what was Pearl Harbor. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, many Americans still didn't realize that despite rising tensions, America had become an enemy of Japan. Most Americans back then did not want to go to war, even though most of Europe had already fallen to Nazi Germany. Americans did try to help their allies overseas through trade embargoes and sending weapons. Sound familiar? But in the end, war still came to America. The United States and the world learned how much costlier it is to fight a war than it is to try to deter one during peacetime. Now, this book does a pretty good job in explaining to young readers the events that led to the attack on Pearl Harbor. But what I also appreciate about this book is that it also talks about the over 100,000 innocent Americans of Japanese descent who were also sent to prison camps in the US after Pearl Harbor. They were sent there for no other reason than having Japanese ancestry. And this shameful and embarrassing chapter in American history is still a reminder today how wars abroad can easily inflame racial prejudice here at home and turn Americans against other Americans. But as bad as the internment of Japanese Americans was, it of course can't compare to what the Nazis did to the Jews and millions of others in the Holocaust. Learning about the Holocaust is how I first learned of the word genocide, which unfortunately is a word that's been brought up in the news lately. Now, I first heard about the Holocaust when I was 9 years old. I remember cringing when my 4th grade teacher talked about how the Nazis shoved people into ovens. I couldn't imagine as a child why anyone would do something so terrible. But I do think this book, What Was the Holocaust, does do a good job in presenting the evil behind the Holocaust to a younger audience. And I'd like to read what the editor of this book wrote to her readers. She wrote, "After you finish reading this book, you will know who planned the Holocaust, where and when it took place, and how it was carried out. But one thing you won't learn is why it happened. That's because there really is no way to explain something that is so purely evil." For a long time, we thought about whether or not to publish a book about the Holocaust. We wondered if the subject was too awful for young readers. But we decided it was such an important event that not including the Holocaust in the series would be wrong. The few survivors of the Holocaust are very old now. When they are no longer alive, it will be up to books to tell the painful story of what happened. Very likely, you will have lots of questions after you finish reading this. We hope you turn to your family or your teachers to talk about them. Of course, the Holocaust finally did end in 1945, only because of the brave soldiers who fought against the Nazis. And this leads me to the third book I recommend for teaching kids about World War II, and that is What Was D-Day? D-Day, of course, was the climactic battle of World War II that took place on June 6, 1944, when over 150,000 Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, France, to take back the continent of Europe. Now, every generation has its challenges, but it's hard to argue that perhaps the greatest generation was the one that grew up during the Great Depression and then went off to fight in World War II. Reading about their stories will give us an appreciation for the lives our generation is able to live today. By the way, if you prefer an online platform for learning about World War II, check out Study.com. Study.com has over 8,300 engaging videos, including real black and white footage from D-Day and other events from World War II. I use it with my son, and we find it a great way to support his homeschooling as well as my own supplemental learning. Use the coupon code HomeschoolNolan and get 30% off the first 3 months. Check out Study.com today. When I was growing up, just about everyone knew someone who had fought in World War II. And in the decades following World War II, the United States and her allies were led mostly by men who had fought in World War II and used what they learned from the war to prevent the world from plunging into another global conflict. But that generation has now left the stage, and it's up to us now to pass on the lessons of World War II to the next generation. And I hope this video has been helpful as you try to prepare your own students for the world they will grow up in. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to click subscribe for more videos like this one. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.